Hello, hello. Welcome to a little mini bridging workshop. So this is what I call half and half and half again, because in the last class we talked about half and half composition, meaning that 50% of your page was one thing and 50% of your page was another thing, and all the different things that you could do with that. Well, today we cut that in half again and we look at quadrant designs. So designs that have 4 boxes roughly equally spaced, and all the different things that we can do there. But I'm also getting ready for a new class called Scrap the Rainbow, and that one is all about using color in your scrapbook page design. Well, I want something that bridges the gap between the two, something about composition and something about color. And I had long wanted to do this quadrant workshop to kind of wrap up half and half, and it dawned on me that this is the perfect way to put everything together, and it's making my creative heart very happy, so I hope you enjoy it too. Now, today we're going to talk about quadrant design with mostly one color, not strictly monochromatic, but using a single color to guide the things that we do on a page. It doesn't mean that the end result is all going to be one color. So just keep in mind that we're being led by one color rather than going all in on that color. Now, quadrant designs are great for using your scraps or 6x6 papers, and 6x6 papers is what I've gone with today, and I have 4 photos today. I've printed all of mine as squares, and you can use squares, you can use 3x4 portraits or landscapes, you can have fewer than 4 photos. There's a lot of different ways that you can change this up, and you don't need to have 4 square photos in order to use the rest of the tips. Okay, but what I do want you to do is take whatever photos that you have that you're going to put on your page and look for a color that unites them all. The color that I want to focus on in this layout is green, because my son is wearing this green bow tie in all 4 photos. They're all taken on the same day, but a busy day doing different things, and I want to use that green as a color that brings it all together. So I know that because he's wearing that, it's in all of the photos, but it's also here in the background, it's here in the clothes, it's here in the greenery, and a little bit of the background here too. This one doesn't have green in the background, and that's absolutely fine. But the green bow tie pulls it all together, and it's in every photo. So I'm going to start with my single color being green. And from that, from your chosen color, choose 3 quadrant pieces, so something that you can cut to about 6x6 in that color. Now, I have this one, and this one. Now, this is from my True Stories 6x6 paper pad. These are both Ellie Studio designs, 6x6 paper pad. But the trick here is that you've got one green in 3 different shades. Now, I'm not putting an olive with a very yellowy green and then a very bluey pine needle green. No, I'm sticking within one color that feels tone on tone. So you can add in white, or you could even add in black as a neutral. But a green on white pattern here, then tone on tone green, but darker. Yes? So that when you look at the 3 patterns that you've chosen all in one color, you should be able to obviously point and go, this one is the lightest, this one is the darkest, and this one is the one in the middle. Or this is the least saturated, and this is the most saturated, and this is the one in the middle. If you can do that with your 3 papers in one color, then you are good to go. Now, that's 3 quadrants. We need 4 because it's quadrants. And for that 4th pattern, choose something that is a colorful pattern but includes the green. For me, it's green. Choose a pattern that's colorful but includes the color that you have here. So for me, that's green, but if you're going with any other color, you're looking for that. And here is my colorful pattern. Now, this is from the same paper pad as that, so I know that these greens mix up. They're both from the True Stories collection, but this then brings in other colors. It gives me lots of different things that I can use as accents throughout my page, and I can use them in little bits, I can use them in big pieces, and it's going to work out fine. And because I have this emphasis on green here, even when I add in little sprinklings of the yellow, the red, the blue, the pink, it'll all still feel like green is my driving color. Now, the next thing we need to do is figure out what is going to make the 12 by 12 background. So you've got a few options. You can always put your 12 by 12 background in as a white sheet, but when I use patterns like this that are on a white background, I really don't tend to go for a white background. I would prefer to have something that has a bit of contrast. So you've got two options if that's where you're going. Either go to your single color and go even more saturated. So you want a green that's even darker here, or whatever color you're using. Or choose a color that is from your multicolored pattern, because you're only going to be seeing this little frame around the outside. So it doesn't need to be 100% green. You can add in another color, and it's not going to overwhelm this because it's just going to be a little frame. So I have both options. I'm going to show them to you so that you can make a decision on what would work for you by seeing an example. Now, these are all 6 by 6. I haven't cut them yet, so I'm just going to arrange them so they're overlapped a little bit in the middle to get my quadrant effect. Now, this is one way that you can arrange them, and that is if you have two white background papers, to put those on the angle. This also lets you go light, medium, dark, oddball. Yeah? So here it is with the darker green, the more saturated color all the way around the edge. And to give you an idea with the photos, I can put them on so you can see how that's going to work. So this is one option, the most saturated shade of green as my background, because I have contrast all the way around. I can't go lighter and get contrast because I've got two white based patterns here. So if I go white in the background, I don't get contrast. I have to go darker, or I have to go to a different color. So hold up one moment. Option 2, I bring in contrasting color, like this yellow. And I put everything back. And you can see how that gives everything a little bit of a different feel. So what I would suggest is not that there is one right answer here between these two pages, the two background papers. I would suggest that actually it comes down to how do you want to tell this story? What is the memory feeling like to you? And when you keep it all to one color family and just have a little bit of the extra color brought in, it feels like a calmer, more cohesive memory. And when you bring in more colors, it's going to feel more energetic, less calm. So this could go either way. You can see from the activities here that there's a lot of energy. I mean, Tigger does a lot of bouncing. But also, this is a day where even though you're at a place that's very, very busy, like to be able to get a photo at Magic Kingdom without anybody else in it kind of gives you the idea of the feel of the day, that even though we're in a place that's really busy, we're kind of in our own little world. So it actually feels relatively calm anyway. The other thing you might want to consider is what's going to go on the facing page. You may have absolutely no idea, and that's absolutely okay. You don't need to think about it for another moment if that's the case. If you do know what's going to go on the facing page, you might want to use that to decide, do you want everything to feel really heavy into one color here if the other side is going to be really colorful? There's no right answer there either, because that could work both ways. Do you want it to feel that those two things are very different, or do you want them to go together? If the page opposite this was something that's another color that's not in here, like say it was a really hot pink and I don't know, maybe even there's no purple in here, so maybe the page opposite is pink and purple, then if that page is a real riot of color that's not here, keeping this to the green would probably be more soothing to the eye than having a really bright color scheme of yellow, green, red on this side, orange, and then pink and purple on the facing page. Yeah? Okay. So figure out where you want to go from there. And we're going to put this together and look at how we can embellish the 4 quadrants. To prepare these, I've cut a strip off off 2 sides of each box to bring it down to a smaller square, just slightly. And I've added brown ink to all of my edges. Then it comes time to attach my 4 quadrants. Just making sure that everything lines up so that I can get my outside edges relatively even. They don't need to be perfect. Nothing does. But pretty close is quite nice. Okay, and then attaching those, and then we're going to build up these 4 spots. Now, in some ways, using 4 photos or maybe 3 photos in a journaling card on 4 quadrants means that you are designing 4 smaller format scrapbook pages. And you can look at it that way. You can embellish each one with the same sort of embellishment that you would use on a 12 by 12 page, but just in a smaller scale. But there is a difference in that all of the elements that we need to include once on a page, or that we usually include once on a page, only have to go once on this full page. Don't need to be on every square. So across all of these, I only need to find 1 space for a title. Yeah. Whereas if I were designing individual small pages, I would be looking for a title space in each one, and I don't need that. Now, the first thing that I do like to do is see that if I have photos that have direction, I want to follow that line. These are the 2 photos of my 4 that show the most direction. So this one, it's clear that they're watching something that's off that way. If I put it over here, you're going to look off the page, because even though we know it's a photo, there is something in our mind, just ever so slightly, that says, oh, I wonder what they're looking at. And we look away. There's nothing there. So I would rather that be directing us into the middle of the page. And then this one, his head's on an angle, his arm is out. It just sits on this diagonal. If I bring it up here, that works well too. But if I bring it down here, again, the line that it's creating is off the page here rather than keeping you in the page. Then that also works well with the fact that I have these 2 photos that have something in common that's not in these 2. Yeah. So child is in all 4, but Tigger is in both of these. Now, it's not a hard, fast rule because look, same person in these 2 as well. It's okay. But Tigger's pretty obvious, and it might not be something that's a bold color or anything. It might be that these 2 photos in your layout are both taken with a big tree that is notable to you, but these 2 photos are from somewhere else. So, keep in mind that you can translate all of those ideas to different things. Okay, so we only need to find 1 place for a title. We really only need to find 1 place to add journaling unless you want to add separate bits of journaling to each one. But if it's all from one day, or it's all from one event, if it's all going together to tell one story, you only need to find 1 place to put the journaling. So in creating these 4 quadrants, I don't tend to think of each one as a separate little page, although you certainly can do it that way. But by having to only find 1 place to put key elements, I just don't feel that that helps me direct where things are going. Okay, now what we do need. I do want to add mats, little tuckies and things like that to these photos, but what am I going to do? If I add more green to everything here, there's going to be more and more and more green, and that is a stylistic choice. You could go all 1 color, but we've added in other colors, and these photos are colorful. So I'm going to add other colors in here, but I'm going to restrict myself to just the colors that are here. So I can add in yellow, I could add in that blue, I could add in this pink, I could add in that red, but that's it. I'm going to stick with those colors. And so now I find my pieces that I'm going to mat the photos with, tuck things in. I need something to journal on. I need a title. all of those colors then come in as photo mats. So I've cut a red one, a pink one, a yellow one, and this kind of sort of off teal, close to teal. Right, so I've got a mat and they're all inked, so I can stick my photos onto those, and I've got a little bit of color on top of all this green, balancing out the color that's in that pattern at the bottom. Now, what do I want to layer in with all of this? I don't want to introduce new colors. I want to stick with what I've got. So I was working with 6x6 papers, which means I now have this stack of offcuts. Perfect for using a punch to go ahead and get more pieces that I can tuck behind and pull all this together. So using those punches, I can repeat the same exact design on all 4 pieces. So I've got one larger label that sits behind at the top left, and then a smaller label that tucks into the next layer, and they're at really, really tiny angles. But these 4 pieces are not attached yet. You've got some options here, and you could go very simply into centering each box on its quadrant box and go from there. However, this then feels very formal in a way, because anytime you take a box and you center it inside another box and you center that inside another box, it feels like how we treat formal portraits, like in a frame or in a gallery. You're always centering and giving more space around the outside to draw your eye in, which sometimes is exactly what we want. But these are really informal, casual, smiley photos. So I would rather they have a more casual, smiley energy. And that comes from things like teeny tiny little angles, being offset, and then having something that that brings in other elements. So I've got this bit that's pulling them all together. I've got a limited color scheme. I've got this same exact format, but now I want to add in things that are going to make it a little different. So one of the things that ends up being really lovely about working with 6x6 paper pads and this concept of having one colorful paper is that it means you probably have small pieces you could cut apart or bits of pattern that you could cut apart that are in that right scale and in the right color scheme. So this is from the same 6x6 paper pad, and I can go straight in to this set here. In fact, I can take this whole row. The sentiment on the typewriter fits the page perfectly. So let's take that whole middle row of embellishment and find a place for each of them. I'm going to take these balloons too, see if I can make them fit. They're little because it's in the 6x6, so I think I can make it fit. Now, each of these needs ink as well, because if I'm inking one thing, I'm going to ink it all, but you could also ink nothing. But I don't particularly like sitting in the middle, so if I'm going to ink something, I ink pretty much everything. So now let's find places for these to go. So this one shares a motif. The teacup comes here. So I can bring that up across on this diagonal and add it in here. And now I start to be able to carry things over the quadrant lines so that things will start to connect. So I could put it over there, or I could put it over here. Oh, I like it on this side with this photo. Put it right up the top there. But with the teacup, the handle on the teacup to this side, I like it over here better. Okay, so one thing that can be helpful is to stick things together at this level first, and then down to your page. So this is going to come over this center line there. And then I can start to look at the next one. Well, these two are the same size, so I don't really want them to repeat here, and I might not want it to repeat here because it might look too blocky. But these other pieces are different sizes, so I can move things around. So I've got this one, for example, which can come nicely up at the top. So I can add this in here first, and then decide where I want it to go. Now I know that this grid paper of all the things I've got on here is the easiest one for journaling. I can write straight onto that and not need to add a journaling box. So I'm going to try bringing it closer to this inside corner so that I can use this space to journal. And I'm just looking at where that teacup goes. So could I pop it over the top edge or underneath to try to find a nice balance. So this sentiment feels like it goes with this photo because this balloon says big yay and his face is definitely a very big yay. So I could bring this up to the top and again have it sit over a dividing line and tuck it in there. Now notice this is not square. This is higher, this is lower. They're also not centered in their boxes. So I don't particularly then want this to be super square. Yeah. So I'm going to bring this one over to this side a little bit so that it's offset from that one. Oh, I've ended up with a little valley here. So I'm going to bring this over just a bit. There we go. And then I have one last corner, one last quadrant. This is the one that works well with this particular piece, but I'm losing the contrast here because I got a white piece of paper with a motif on it here on top of a white piece of paper with a motif. So this just needs a mat. So I can go back to the little offcuts, cut a piece to go around it, ink that up, and then I don't have that issue anymore. And then that can fit in there. Now, likewise, I don't want this to feel like it's in a column. I want it to be offset. So do I even bring this to the other side? Do I bring this over here and bring that there? Bring the whole photo over that dividing line? Perhaps a bit extreme in this case. Keeping in mind that that's going to have journaling. And in fact, I know I can journal straight on the green and that's why I did it. But what happens if I do this? Journaling with contrast. I like that better. So let's add in a journaling strip there. You could have an offcut that it has journaling lines, or you could just grab a 3x4 journaling card, put that in, and it's going to be overlapped, so you're not going to see the whole 3x4 piece, but that's okay. Yeah, that helps balance things a little better. So then this over to this side, I think. Now, the only thing that I'm not loving right now is that then I've got this kind of blockiness going here in the middle. So before I attach this, I'm going to work my title in. And that way I can see where all of these pieces need to fit. I'm going to use 3 different lettering pieces for my title. So I've got one word that's all one giant word here. And that's going to be the first piece that I place. It's the least flexible. I can't move it around. I can't alter the spacing. It's just the piece that it is. So I have to find a spot that I like and stick with it. Now, because I'm taking it over the quadrant, I am going to get a change of paper inside those loops there, which isn't always my favorite thing, but I prefer that to having, say, the photo end in the middle there or something like that. And then the other two are letter stickers, so they are easier to move around. But you'll notice I'm sticking with neutrals, white and gray. There's a bit of gray in here. And a color from the pattern, so I'm using yellow. Now, see how this might be nice, nice spacing to balance the and the magic, these two words here, but there's two things that don't work. One is that I don't love that the margin keeps moving to the left because I've got this big piece, and normally we would want it to kind of fall either straight underneath or come a little bit to the right or alternate. So if it's going to go out and then come in, but there's something about it stair stepping that way that just looks a little unbalanced. Like this is the bottom shelf and it's trying to hold up this giant thing up here. Not going to work. Also, when I try then to put the photo in, I'm naturally going to this spot where I've now covered up a word. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is find the right place to put the last word. I think the enjoy and I think the work just right, but I can figure out where this photo should go and where that word should go at the same time by moving everything all together. I'll come back for the dot and the I. Right, so this piece now, once the title is on, has a nice place that it just seems to fit, and that's here. So that this little grouping of labels sits nicely in that little corner that's made by the and the drop of the J. But that means I need to make the magic part fit. And look, it makes it just the right height to go in here and sit this direction. Now, you might notice that there's one thing that I don't normally love, and I don't love it here, but it's okay. It's not so bad that it doesn't work. And that is that I have blocked in some space. Just a little bit. I'm trying to put the I. The dot's going to go right underneath there. Oh well. Okay, so in a way, this space here has become trapped because I've got this word down here. Yeah? So what I suggest with things like that, it's very much a case of, does it bother you? Does it bother me? Yeah? And our different schedules of looking at things, the different interpretation we have when we look at something, it's going to shout to you whether this bothers you or whether you don't see it at all unless I point to it. Yeah. If it doesn't bother you at all, then don't worry. If this does bother you and you're thinking, I don't like that space in there, then this is not the right spacing for you. Yeah. And you might want to try a different set of letter stickers. You might want to try a different spacing. You might not start with this word, all of those things. But when you start using the pieces that you have, you will find that you can put little corners like this together. And if this element it was kind of hard to figure out where it should go, put down another element and see if that element helps you figure out where it should go. Now, the more that I look at this, I keep coming back to one thing that's catching my eye that I'm not loving, and it's this teacup piece. That's okay. I'm just going to find a different spot for it to go because I do actually really like it on this page, but I'm just not loving that particular spot. Okay, so let's try a different style here. Give you a different option. That could work if that looked right to your eye. What if we bring in another piece that's a whole word, yeah, like a script piece. Now this is magical and I just want magic, but that's okay. I can trim this and take it back Just magic. Now, this is quite a wide piece, but it's much thinner than this one. So it's going to be quite light on the page. And this time, instead of bringing in a color, I'm just bringing in a bit of sparkle. So as strange as it may seem, gold sparkle to me becomes a neutral because it's not a color that I need to worry about being there in the pattern paper. And this way, I go right up to that edge. Now I am going to get all sorts of things in the gaps of this particular script because I'm going over all the layers. So if that bothers you, then you might like the first option better. But here we go. Dot going up here. Yeah. Very different kind of look, and it's a little bit more sparkly, obviously, and that makes it a little bit more energetic in this particular case. So it feels right to the story. Now, what I'm noticing is that in this one and this one, the die cuts are the cut apart pieces. They're tucked up at the top, and I really like them. So that's what I'm going to try with the others. And I noticed that on both of these, they can be cut a little bit smaller. So I could do things like cut this top line down so that it's closer to the sentiment. And I can do the same on this one too. And then I can work with the space that's at the top of my page without having things fall off my layout. So it's not quite the placement I want, but I'm getting there. So maybe this one goes behind these tags here, labels. And then this one can go over to the side here. Yes, and that teacup can fit in there. Now, then I find where all this can fit. So I can go up off the top edge, but not over the top of the whole page. Move this one a little bit so that it doesn't feel and this one is stuck now with all that, so I'm not moving that. Do I want this over here? No, because then I end up with this strange open space here. So I'm going to move this one closer. Which then gives me the answer, did I find room for the typewriter? No. It's okay. Do I need a typewriter for this day? No. The sentiment that's there was nice, but it's all right. Now, almost there. Not quite. It needs a little bit of something to give it some life that's not just straight boxes. Now, I have started that by having these little pieces be angled. But I've also got this script over here. I've got the sparkle. And so bringing in some additional sparkle is going to help a lot. So I can bring one of these stars all the way up here, perhaps. Might need a smaller one because the gaps in the middle get a little messy with all the different papers. I'm going to add that one in there, and then this also has dots. So I can bring little groupings like this to give everything a bit of sparkle. Then some enamel dots. Now, because this is a Disney page, I'm going to put an enamel Mickey in here. It could just be a plain dot, don't worry. I want to be careful I don't lose the text there. And then to go with those, remember I'm staying with the colors I have, so I'm going to bring in a little yellow heart. because I've already brought in yellow, so that works fine. And a red one. So I've used one Mickey, one yellow heart, and one red heart, but you could use 3 hearts or 3 stars or 3 circles, anything like that. Now, here's where we get to making a point about color. So remember, all the way at the beginning of this layout, I was focused on green, and I built this whole background out of green to emphasize the green that everything had in common. But then when I added other things to this, I haven't added a single stitch of green. And that's why this doesn't ever feel like a traditional monochromatic layout, because it's not in any way, shape, or form. But it uses the same direction that we use when we start a single color layout, when we're going to make everything green. But this still remains a colorful look while bringing us all different colors, but they're all limited to one pattern, which we chose because it had the green. So we're directed from this starting color, and then the embellishment can create a different look on top of that. Now, I'll see you again in a few days, but we will look at very different compositions in quadrants and very different color combinations and things. So this is just to get us started. See how you go with creating a layout that has 3 pieces in one color, something where you're going to find light, medium, and dark, and then 1 multicolored pattern. Choose either a more saturated background in that same color or a color that's in your pattern here that offers some contrast. And then do all of your embellishment with the colors that already appear in that color pattern. Where you move things around is up to you, and the different pieces that you find may help you move things so that they can fit. Just like I needed to move things around to make this title fit. Yes? But we'll look at different ways and different size photos and all of that as we go. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoy. Happy scrapping.